I think the FAP, to some extent, is a very good model for testing effect of the drug, because the disease is very, the process of growing is very fast, so you can see an effect in a very short period of time. In normal people, where we have what we call the sporadic adenoma, the steps that produce as you said, the adenoma is more or less the same, even if the sequence is not exactly the same. But the growing of the polyp, luckily, is less faster. So in order to see an effect, you have to give a prolonged treatment, let's say a couple of years. But in principle, you may obtain the same result. So you may reduce the growing of the polyp, because the mechanism that make the polyp growing is the same. So it's the hyperactivity of arachidonic acid that generate PGE2, that PGE2 generate epithelial growth cells. So yes, the answer is yes. And once again, if you can rebalance the content of the cell with the EPA and try to equalize, even that is, I think, is almost impossible nowadays. But at least having 2:1 or 3:1, the ratio between omega-6 and omega-3 would be very for your would be very good for your health.
Have you ever worked with DHA formulations in the area, or did you only work with EPA products?
I published in the 1996 a trial on the New England Journal of Medicine in Crohn's disease by giving a mixture of EPA and DHA. The preparation was 70% pure in a free fatty acid, and we had both then. But then during the years following, I tried to identify what I believe was the most important active ingredient, and my choice. I don't know if you agree, because I know that you are a fan of DHA, but not particularly. But anyway, what I found is that if you give to the human EPA, you can have, by elongation the saturation of EPA, what we call the coursapentaenoic acid, that is the first metabolite, and then you can obtain DHA into the body. So the way from EPA to DHA is a way that you can follow, you can obtain. The reverse situation is very, very difficult. So if you give DHA, very difficultly you can obtain EPA, because the reverse mechanism doesn't work properly. We did a study where we quote the concentration in a red blood cell membrane phospholipid, that is a very good marker of patient compliance. After giving just free fatty acid as an EPA, and we recorded at the end of the trial a very high amount of EPA, of course, also DPA. At the very end, it takes longer, but also DHA. So at the end, this is a pragmatic solution. I can give you EPA because I'm sure you will have EPA, DPA, and DHA. So I can cover all the spectrum of the most important marine and omega-3 fatty acids.
Okay. And according to your experience, what was the most appropriate dose of EPA for these indications?
I want to tell you the result of the study we did a few years ago in mean mouse. The mean mouse APCG mutated gene is a model of familial adenoma polyposis. And we treat with a high dose of free fatty acid as an EPA, those mouse. And we had a control group of mouse where the diet was not enriched with EPA, but just a typical Western diet. After 9 weeks, we sacrificed the animal, and what we found was amazing, because the reduction in polyp burden in this mouse that developed a sort of FAP, the same disease that we have in the human, was the highest never found before, there was 80% reduction in polyp. And that is very, very, very nice result. But most of all, when we quote the amount of fatty acid in the membrane, we have a completely reverse situation that we normally have in human, for example. So we have 2%, 1% of arachidonic acid in the membrane, and 24% of EPA in the membrane. In human, we have exactly the opposite. Okay. 0.5, 1% of EPA, and 19, 18, 20% of arachidonic acid. This is a paradox, because the dose we give to those mouse was 250 times more than the dose we are going to human. And in human, we are giving 2 grams per day. That mouse eaten half a kilo of the product we did. So it's something cannot reach, but it's a very interesting as a model, because in principle, the highest dose you give, the better result you may have. You have to take into account also the compliance. So the dose has been tested in many patients, now more than 1,000. And it is a good compromise between efficacy and tolerability. So to answer finally on your question, the dose is 2 grams per day. The capsule is gastroprotected, have a sustained release mechanism, so there is no upper side effect. The EPA is in a free fatty acid form, so there is no need of any kind of enzyme to be digested, and the absorption is very easily, because the EPA in a free fatty acid can cross the epithelial wall without need any micella or any kind of enzyme. Right. So this is what I believe personally is the gold standard to long-term supplementation in patient or even in health with inflammatory chronic condition.